They said that Bran Stark had never feared heights because he had been born reaching for them. Before he could walk, he had pulled himself up the carved legs of his father's chair, up his mother's skirts, up the rough stones of Winterfell's walls. The castle was his, not because his father ruled it, but because his hands had learned every crack and ledge, every smooth-worn stone and hidden handhold. The sky above the battlements felt more like home to him than the halls below. The wind was sharp that morning, carrying the smell of rain and the distant trace of wood smoke from the village. Bran's fingers were numb where they clung to the cold stone. He did not mind. His toes found an old notch in the wall, the kind he had used 100 times, and he pushed himself higher, his heart thudding with the familiar rush. If he climbed just a little more, he could reach the crenel and pull himself up onto the parapet. From there, the world opened. He could see past the first keep and the broken tower, over the Godswood with its red-leafed heart tree, across the fields where the household guards drilled, all the way to the faint line of the Wolfswood in the distance. From there, he could pretend he was a knight already, watching over his father's lands, hand on his sword hilt. He grinned to himself and reached up. Bran! His mother's voice cracked across the yard like a whip. His fingers slipped. Just a little, just enough for the stone to bite his skin. For a heartbeat, his stomach lurched, and the world seemed to tilt beneath him. He imagined, without meaning to, what it would be like if he missed the next hold. If his hand slid off the stone. If he tumbled backward, arms flailing, down past the gray blur of the wall, down toward the hard-packed earth of the yard. He imagined the thud. He imagined the silence afterward. His heart hammered harder. He pressed himself flat against the wall, fingers digging into the crevice he had found. Bran, look at me, Catelyn Stark called again, her voice softer now but no less firm. Slowly, he turned his head. She stood below in the courtyard, skirts bundled in one hand to keep them out of the mud. Her auburn hair was pinned up neatly, but a few strands had come loose, whipped by the same wind that tugged at his dark hair. Her eyes were on him, not furious, not yet, afraid. He had seen that look only once before, when Rickon had wandered too close to the well. "Come down," she said. There was a tremor under the words. "I'm almost to the top," Bran said. The wall scratched his cheek when he spoke. "I can see the whole yard from up there. That is not the point." Her gaze flicked up the wall, to where it rose sheer and unbroken another man's height above him. "You have climbed enough for today. Your father will have questions he wants you to answer. Come down, Bran. Now." He could have pretended not to hear. He had done it before. But something in her tone, something that was more than the usual exasperation, caught him. She had been quieter these past days, more distracted. There were whispers in the hall, hurried conversations that stopped when he came near. The ravens had come, and his father had gone oftener to the Godswood, and the air of Winterfell felt like it did before a storm. Bran sighed, the sound lost to the wind. Carefully, he shifted his weight, found a lower foothold, and began to climb down. It was always harder going down than up. His hands burned. His arms trembled a little by the time his boots scraped the packed earth of the yard. His mother was there before he had quite steadied himself, her hand on his shoulder warm and tight. "You'll break your neck one day," she murmured. Up close, he could see how pale she was. "Do you understand that, Bran? Do you know how high that is?" She tilted his chin up so he would look, really look, at the stretch of stone he had just descended. He swallowed. From down here, it did seem higher. His heart gave a belated, heavy thump. "I've done it before," he said, because he could not bear to admit that the sudden lurch in his belly, when he'd imagined falling, had frightened him. "I never fall. Everyone falls," Catelyn said softly. "The gods do not love the proud." He almost said that the gods must love him very well. Then, for how many times they had kept his hands steady. Instead, he pressed his lips together. Her fingers lingered at the back of his neck. "Your father is waiting for you in the hall," she said. "Wash the dirt off your hands first. You are nearly a man now, not some wildling's brat. A man, Bran thought as he hurried toward the well. Not a brat, a man, and one day a knight. Knights did not worry about walls. Knights did not fall. The water in the bucket was just above freezing. Bran hissed when he plunged his hands in, but he did not pull them out. Dirt and flecks of stone dust swirled in the water, turning it cloudy. He scrubbed his fingers until the scrapes on his knuckles burned and the chill seeped into his bones. "Mother catch you on the wall again?" Jon Snow's voice came from behind him, wry and amused. Bran rolled his eyes before he turned. "She didn't catch me," he said. "I climbed down. That's different." Jon leaned one shoulder against the well's low stone wall. Ghost stood at his heel, red eyes watchful. The direwolf's fur always startled Bran a little, even though he had known the beast since it was a pup. Snow white, too white to belong to anything but a tail, and those eyes like two coals banked in ash. They softened when Bran reached out to scratch him behind the ear. "You'll be taller than that wall soon," Jon said. "Then she'll have to find something else to fret about." Bran snorted. "I hope I'm taller than you, at least." Jon's mouth twisted. He wore the look he got when someone reminded him, without meaning to, that he was the bastard and would never be anything else. Bran hated that look. "You might be," Jon said. "You've more of father's height than Robb does, I think. All long legs and no sense." "I have sense," Bran protested. "I know where to put my feet." "On the ground is a good place to start," Jon said. "Unless you mean to fly." Bran thought of the moment, just for a heartbeat, when his mother had called and his fingers had slipped. For that heartbeat he had felt as if he really might fly, just not the way Jon meant. "I don't want to fly," he said. "I want to ride, properly, with a sword." He nodded at the wooden blade slung over Jon's shoulder. "Will you show me that new parry Ser Roderick taught you?" Jon's eyes warmed. "You should be washing and going to father." "It will just be for a little," Bran said. "I'll be quicker if I'm less muddy, won't I? And you said yourself I was all legs and no sense. So I need more practice." Jon's laugh was quiet, but it lit him from within, like a candle behind a horn screen. "All right, come, then." They went to the practice yard, where the straw-stuffed dummies stood in a neat row and the wooden swords lay scattered from the morning's drills. Frost still clung to the shadows along the wall. Bran picked the lightest blade he could find, testing the balance on his palm as Jon had taught him. It still felt heavy, but not impossibly so. Not like the first time. "Feet apart," Jon said. "Wider. You'll be shoved over if you stand like that." "Good. Now grip. Not with all your strength at once. Leave your wrists loose or you'll be too slow." Bran shifted, adjusting his hold. Jon stepped in front of him, sword held low, the point angled toward Bran's shoulder. "Imagine I'm some southern knight in gilded armor," Jon said. "I've called your father a traitor and your mother a whore. What do you do?" "I knock your teeth out," Bran said, baring his in a fierce grin. "Then try it," Jon said. They moved. Against Jon, Bran was very aware of the shortness of his own reach. Jon's blade tapped his shoulder, his thigh, his ribs, lightly, but enough to sting. Bran swung too wide and left himself open. He rushed in too close and lost his balance, nearly pitching forward. Each time, Jon corrected him. "Smaller steps," Jon said. "Think where your feet are going, not just your sword. Watch my shoulder. The sword will follow it." Bran was panting after only a few passes, his breath steaming in the cold air. His scraped hands throbbed where they gripped the wood, but he refused to loosen his hold. He thought of knights in their bright armor, of the stories old Nan told of Serwyn of the Mirror Shield and the Dragon Knight. None of the songs mentioned how much your shoulders ached or how your lungs burned. He ducked, twisted, brought his sword up in a desperate block when Jon feinted for his left side and came in from the right. Wood clacked on wood. Bran's arm jolted with the impact, but his blade held. Jon stepped back, lowering his weapon. "Better," he said. "Again." They went on until Bran's arms felt like lead. At last Jon took pity on him and called a halt. "Go," he said. or father will have me in the stocks for keeping you." Bran wiped his brow on his sleeve. His tunic was damp at the collar now, his hair sticking to his forehead. He felt alive, tired, sore, and alive. "Do you think," he said as they walked back toward the inner yard, "do you think father would ever let me be a knight? Proper one, with spurs and a cloak and everything?" Jon was silent for a moment. "In the South, they don't knight those who follow the old gods," he said finally. "But you could still be as good as any of them. Better if you keep your feet where they ought to be." "That's not the same," Bran said, disappointed. "No," Jon agreed softly, "but you'd know what you were, and so would the men who rode beside you. Sometimes that matters more than what other folk call you." Bran frowned. He did not entirely understand. But he understood that Jon believed it, and Jon rarely believed anything lightly. He squared his shoulders as they entered the keep. He might never kneel before a septon with 7 oils, but he would still be a knight. Someday he swore it. With a sword that was not wood, on a horse that was not one of the old geldings in the stable. He would ride into battle with his father's banner above him and never, ever fall. The great hall smelled of smoke and roasted meat, of damp wool and the faint tang of iron. Winterfell's banners hung heavy from the rafters, the snarling direwolf of House Stark snapping in a draft that slipped through the stones. The long tables had not yet been set for a feast, but the servants moved quickly, bringing benches into place, polishing cups, laying clean rushes over flagstones scuffed by countless boots. Bran slipped in by the side door, hair still damp from the hurried wash his mother had demanded, tunic changed for one that was only a little patched at the elbows. He paused by a pillar, catching his breath, and looked up toward the high seat. His father sat there, speaking quietly with Maester Luwin and his mother. Eddard Stark's face was as Bran always thought of it. Lined by wind and care, the dark of his beard threaded with early gray, his eyes like clear ice pools in winter. They missed nothing. They found Bran now almost at once and narrowed a fraction. Bran took a breath and walked forward, trying not to feel his own stride. Men turned as he passed. He heard his name, low and amused on some tongues, fond on others. "Father," he said when he reached the dais, bowing his head. "Bran," Eddard said, "your mother tells me you are determined to test the height of every wall in Winterfell." Bran shot Catelyn a betrayed look. She met it with calm eyes. "I climbed a little," he admitted. "I didn't fall. Yet," Eddard said. His gaze went beyond Bran, to the thick walls of the hall, as if he could see through stone to the yard outside. Stone is patient, can wait as long as it must. A boy's hands will slip sooner or later. Bran opened his mouth to argue, but Maester Luwin cleared his throat gently. "If I may, my lord," he said, holding up the leather tube in his hands. A black feather stuck to his sleeve. "The raven has come from King's Landing." Catelyn's hand tightened on the arm of the chair. Eddard's jaw worked. For a moment, Bran saw him not as Lord of Winterfell but as something else. As a man who had ridden south once before and come back with scars he never spoke of. "Read it," Eddard said. Luwin broke the wax and unrolled the parchment. His lips moved silently as he scanned the neat, slanting script. Bran watched his face, trying to read the lines there. There was a little more silver in the maester's hair than there had been last year, he noticed. Another measure of time's passage. "It is from the Queen's brother," Luwin said at last. "From Tyrion Lannister, my lord. He writes that the king rides north to visit his old friend." The maester's brows drew together. "To visit you, my lord. The king and his court." A murmur rippled through the hall. The words seemed to take a moment to sink into Bran. The king, coming here, to Winterfell. He had seen King Robert Baratheon once, from afar, when Bran was much smaller and his father had taken Robb and Jon south to treat with their liege lord. The king had been a mountain of a man even then, with a black beard and a laugh like thunder. Bran remembered the way he had clapped father on the back, the way their voices had rolled together like storm clouds. "A royal progress," Catelyn whispered. "This late in the year?" "Robert never was wise with seasons," Eddard said, but there was a strange smile at the corner of his mouth, half fond, half resigned. He rose from the high seat, the motion smooth despite his heavy furs. "How many days?" "By his reckoning," Luwin said. "They are 10 days' ride away, perhaps less if they push their horses. Then we have much to do." Eddard descended the dais, the hall parting for him like a wave. Men straightened when he passed, hands going to hearts or hilts. Catelyn followed, her skirts whispering over the rushes. Bran's heart hammered. The king was coming here to his home. The king and the knights of the Kingsguard and the queen with her golden hair and the princes, even Joffrey with his sharp nose and sharper tongue. He had heard Sansa talk of them often enough. "Bran," his father said. Bran jumped. He had not realized Eddard had come so close, those pale eyes fixed on him now. "I will need you to run messages, to help Hodder and the stable hands ready the guest quarters. No climbing. There is enough work on the ground." "Yes, father," Bran said automatically. The words tasted sour in his mouth. He wanted to say that he could see better from the walls, that he could tell how many riders rode with the king, whether they were tired, whether their banners were bright or frayed. But he bit the words back. Eddard's hand came down on his shoulder, heavy and reassuring. "It will be a great wonder for you to see a king arrive," he said more softly. "You need not risk your neck on the tower to make it so." Bran looked up at him. There was something in his father's eyes he had not seen there before. A subtle unease, a shadow behind the pale. "Is it bad that he is coming?" Bran asked. Eddard's fingers tightened for a moment, then eased. "He is my oldest friend," he said. "That is both blessing and burden. Go help your brothers. Winterfell must look its best." Bran nodded and turned away, his thoughts tumbling like leaves in a gust. The king was coming. The king and his knights. If he could not watch them from the tallest tower, he would find another way. He always did. The day the king arrived, the sky was a hard, clear blue, the kind that made every breath sting a little in the lungs. The ravens had been restless since dawn, flapping from tower to tower, their croaks echoing off stone. Bran had woken before the first bell, unable to sleep with his head so full of images. Gleaming armor, bright banners, strange faces. He was not on the highest tower. That had been the compromise. Eddard Stark had forbidden him the broken tower and the more treacherous stretches of wall, but he had allowed Bran a place on the outer ramparts above the main gate, under watchful eyes. 2 guardsmen stood close enough to grab him if he leaned too far. Bran pretended not to notice them. Robb stood at his right, tall and straight, his hair a brighter copper than their father's, his jaw set in a line that mimicked Eddard's even if he did not know it. Jon was on his other side, quieter, hands hooked in his belt, Ghost lying like a patch of snow at his feet. Below them, in the yard, the household had assembled. Maester Luwin, Theon Greyjoy, Septa Mordane, Sansa and Arya in their best dresses, Rickon fidgeting beside a harried old Nan. The distant thunder of hooves grew louder. Bran leaned forward despite himself, fingers curled around the cold stone of the Merlin. The guards exchanged wary glances but said nothing. Outside the walls, the Kingsroad was a ribbon of gray, and upon it moved a line of color and motion. First came the outriders, the king's scouts, their cloaks snapping in the wind. Then the banners. The crowned stag of House Baratheon in black and gold, the golden lion of Lannister crimson beside it. Spears tipped with steel flashed, and the sun struck fire from shields and helm crests. There were so many of them. Bran had seen men ride out for the harvest, for hunts, for patrols, but never like this. The king brought half the south with him, it seemed. "There," Robb murmured, pointing. Bran followed his hand and saw a giant of a man riding at the head of the column. Even atop the massive black stallion, King Robert seemed too large for the saddle. His black beard was flecked with gray, his face ruddy from wind and wine. His breastplate stretched a little tight over his belly. But when he laughed at something the man beside him said, the sound rolled up the road like distant thunder. Beside the king rode a knight in armor so bright it hurt Bran's eyes. Gold from helm to greaves. A lion's head worked in intricate detail upon his pauldron. His hair was the same color, a thick mane that flowed from beneath his helm. Jaime Lannister, Bran thought, enthralled. The Kingslayer himself. The man from Old Nan's stories who had stabbed the Mad King in the back and been called hero and oathbreaker in the same breath. On the other side of Robert rode the Queen. Cersei Lannister's hair was a sheet of spun gold, her face pale and perfect as carved ivory. Her eyes, when they lifted to the walls, were green and cool. Behind her followed a long train of courtiers and knights, ladies on palfreys, servants driving wagons laden with chests and casks. They look. Bran struggled for the right word. They look like something out of a story. They are, Jon said quietly, just not always the kind old Nan tells at the hearth. Bran glanced at him. Jon's face was unreadable, his mouth a thin line. His gaze lingered on Jaime Lannister with something that was not quite admiration and not quite contempt. The procession halted before the gate. The portcullis rose with a clatter of chains. In the yard below, his father stepped forward to meet the king, the household arrayed behind him. Bran could not hear their words from this height, but he saw the way Robert dismounted heavily and pulled Eddard into a crushing embrace, saw the way their laughter met and mingled. "Lord Stark," Theon mimicked under his breath, from where he leaned against the wall a little way behind them. "You've not changed a bit, except you look as if you've swallowed a cask of your own ale." Robb shot him a warning look, but his lips twitched. Bran almost laughed, too, but he could not tear his eyes from Jaime Lannister. The knight had slipped from his saddle with easy grace, his golden cloak falling just so as he turned to take in the walls of Winterfell. That, Bran thought, is what a knight should look like. Bright as the sun, unafraid beneath any eyes. He imagined himself in armor like that, imagined standing at the king's side, sword at his hip, his father looking at him with pride. A gust of wind brought the faint echo of Robert's booming voice up to the wall. "Down in that bloody crypt, I say, I want to pay my respects to your dead." Eddard inclined his head, grave and unyielding as stone. Bran knew what the crypts meant to his father, the weight of dead Starks in the dark. He shivered, though the sun was bright. The guards at his side shifted, drawing his attention back to the present. "Remember, Bran," one murmured, not unkindly. "No leaning out. Your Lord Father will have our hides." Bran pulled back a little, though his fingers still itched to follow the king's progress with every step. There would be time, he told himself. Time to see the king from the ground, time to watch the knights in the yard, to hear their stories and perhaps, if he were lucky, to feel the weight of one of their swords in his hand. This was only the beginning. The feast that night stretched on like a golden dream. Torches flared along the walls, and candles floated on dishes of water down the length of the high tables. The smells were overwhelming. Roasted venison dripping fat, honeyed carrots, trout baked with lemon and herbs, fresh bread still warm from the ovens. The noise of voices and laughter and clattering plates rolled and echoed under the vaulted ceiling. Bran sat midway down the table with Robb and Jon and Theon, close enough to see the high seat clearly but far enough that the king's words were a blur. It did not matter. He saw enough. Robert drank from a huge antlered horn, his laughter loud and frequent. Cersei beside him was a still point amid the chaos, smiling when spoken to, her eyes veiled. On her other side sat Sansa, bright with nervous delight, hanging on every word that fell from the royal lips. Joffrey Baratheon sat across from her, the candlelight making his hair almost luminous. He wore a velvet doublet embroidered with tiny golden lions, and he held himself very straight, his nose high. When he smiled, it never reached his eyes. Bran watched him mock a northern lord's accent under his breath, saw Sansa's quick, anxious laugh, saw the way Arya scowled down the table and stabbed at her meat. Behind the royal table stood the Kingsguard, all in white. White cloaks, white enamel on their armor, white belts at their waists. Some were old, some younger, but all had the same straight-backed poise, the same distant watchfulness. Ser Barristan Selmy, the Lord Commander, had a face like an old knight from a story, all lined and stern and sad. Beside him stood Jaime Lannister, gold against their pale, his surcoat embroidered with the lion of his house over the white of his station. Bran could not stop looking at them. This, he thought, this was what knighthood was supposed to be. The finest swords in the realm, sworn to protect the king, draped in honor as in snow. They piss in pots the same as any other men, Jon muttered softly when he caught Bran staring. Don't let the cloaks fool you. They fought on the trident, Bran said. They fought in wars, all of them. They must be brave. So are half the men in Father's guard, Jon said. He tore a chunk from his bread, dipping it in stew. Bravery doesn't always sit at the king's table. Bran frowned. You just don't like them because they're from the south. I don't like them because I've heard what some of them have done, Jon said. But he let it go when he saw Bran's stubborn jaw set. On the dais, Eddard Stark rose to propose a toast. The hall quieted. His words were simple, as his words often were, but they carried farther than all of Robert's booming jests. He spoke of friendship, of the bond between North and South, of the king's long journey and the honor of his presence. Bran watched his father's face and wondered what it had looked like when he was younger, when he had ridden south to fight in Robert's war, when he had seen these same men on a battlefield with blood in their beards instead of wine. After the toast, minstrels took up their instruments. Harps and flutes and drums wove a tapestry of sound that shifted from lively to mournful and back again. Dancing began. Sansa was soon spun away by a dark-haired knight from the Vale. Arya, to the horror of Septa Mordain, slipped among the serving girls and almost collided with a tray of trenchers. Rickon fell asleep with his head in old Nan's lap. Bran stayed where he was, watching, memorizing. Knights in bright cloaks whirled with ladies in silk. Theon made some sly comment about the Queen's brothers that made Robb choke on his ale. Jon grew quiet, more so as the night wore on, his eyes going often to the white cloaks at the high table. Once, Bran found Jaime Lannister's gaze on him. Just for a heartbeat, the knight's green eyes were hard to read. There might have been amusement there, or curiosity, or nothing at all. Jaime tipped his cup a fraction in Bran's direction before turning back to whatever the king had said. Bran's face flushed hot. He ducked his head, suddenly very aware that his own tunic was plain gray wool. His boots scuffed, his hands still bearing faint scratches from the wall. He imagined himself in enameled plate and white cloak, the room turning to look when he moved, the songs they would one day sing. "I'll be better than them," he murmured into his cup. "I'll be a knight of the North and the South both." The words were swallowed by the hall, lost in laughter and music and the clink of cups. But Bran felt them settle in his chest like a vow. The yard the next morning felt strangely smaller with so many strangers in Winterfell. Southern knights in bright cloaks came to watch the northern boys drill, their laughter low and amused when a practiced sword slipped or a wobbling thrust went wide. Stable boys trotted nervous horses past the targets, and grooms shouted at each other over bales of hay. Servants pressed themselves against walls to avoid the tangle. Ser Roderick Castle, Gods bless him, bellowed loud enough to cut through it all. "Your feet, Bran. If a strong wind can knock you over, so can a Lannister. Wider. Good. Now your grip. This is not a flail, it's a sword. You do not swing it like you're threshing wheat." Bran tried to do as he was told. The practice sword was heavier today, or his arm weaker. His shoulders ached from the feast's hours at table and the restless sleep that followed. His dreams had been full of white cloaks and golden lions, of walls that grew taller the more he climbed. He had woken with his heart racing, the taste of something copper and bitter in his mouth. He focused on the wood in his hand, a pivot parry. His wrist twinged when Ser Roderick brought his own blade down in a slow, controlled arc, forcing Bran to meet it. "That's better," the old knight said. His whiskers were rimed with frost, his bald spot reddened by the cold. Again, war does not care if you were up half the night watching fools dance. War cares that your blade is where it ought to be. Your beard didn't care about dancing either, Theon called, breathless, as he circled Robb. "It was in your ale more than your mouth." Ser Roderick snorted. "My beard has seen more battles than your wet head," he said without turning. "Least of all against a few cups of ale." Robb laughed, then had to break off to block Theon's lunge. Blades clacked. Snowflakes melted on the packed earth of the yard. Out of the corner of his eye, Bran saw a flash of white and gold. Jaime Lannister had come to watch. He stood near the archway, helm under one arm, golden hair shining despite the cold. Beside him was another Kingsguard, Ser Meryn Trant, dull-faced and heavy, his white cloak dragging in the slush. Bran's chest tightened. He wanted to impress him. He wanted the Kingslayer to see him and think, "There is a boy who might one day be more than a provincial lordling. There is a boy who knows how to hold a sword." "Eyes on me," Ser Roderick snapped. "You'll have time enough to stare at Southerners when they're trying to kill you." Bran swallowed and nodded. He brought his sword up again, forcing his gaze to the old knight's shoulders, as Jon had taught him. The next stroke he met more cleanly. The next, cleaner still. "Good," Ser Roderick said at last. He stepped back, lowering his blade. "You are not hopeless." Bran grinned, panting. Praise from Ser Roderick was as rare as summer snow. "Could I beat a Lannister?" he asked. "One of the prince's guards?" "You might beat Theon if he's drunk and you're lucky," Ser Roderick said dryly. "Do not get ahead of yourself, boy." Jaime Lannister's voice drifted over then, smooth and amused. "The old man is right. Pride cuts deeper than any sword." Ser Roderick stiffened. He turned, bowing stiffly. "Ser Jaime," he said, "we do not often have a Kingsguard gracing our little yard." "You have good stone," Jaime said, eyeing the walls, "and a sharper tongue than some of your southern counterparts." His gaze slid to Bran. "The boy has your stance," he told Eddard's old armsmaster. "If you stand him in a strong wind, he won't blow over." "That's more than I can say for half the knights in King's Landing." Heat surged to Bran's face. "Thank you, Ser," he blurted. Jaime's lips quirked. "Don't thank me yet. You've not been in a real fight." He tipped his helm back on his hip, studying Bran openly. "You're Eddard Stark's middle son." "Yes, Ser," Bran said. He tried to stand straighter without looking as if he were trying. "Do you mean to be a knight?" Jaime asked, sounding as if he already knew the answer. "Yes, Ser," Bran said again. Jaime's gaze flicked to Jon, to Robb, back to Bran. "The North has its own ways," he said. "You'll find the South expects you to kneel to more than just a king if you come there." He shrugged. "Still, if you learn to keep your feet, that's one thing they can't take from you." He turned away then, already bored, perhaps, or perhaps just done with whatever curiosity had brought him. Ser Meryn trudged after him like a shadow. Bran watched him go, his heart pounding, his mind whirling. The Kingslayer had spoken to him, had watched him fight, had said that he had a good stance. Felt like a blessing and a challenge both. "I will be a knight," Bran whispered to himself as he lifted his sword again. "I will." The Godswood was quieter than the yard, quieter than the hall, quieter even than the cold stone of the crypts. Bran had always liked it there. When he was smaller, he had crept among the roots of the heart tree during hide and seek, its carved face watching him with eyes that seemed to bleed. The air carried the scent of damp earth and leaves and something older than either. Now, as the sun slipped behind the walls and the sky turned the color of old iron, Bran stepped between the dark trunks with more purpose. The noise of the castle fell away behind him. His breath puffed in front of him like ghosts. He found his father where he had expected to. Kneeling in the shallow pool before the heart tree, gray cloak pooled about him. The red leaves above stirred in a wind Bran could not feel, whispering against one another. Eddard's sword, ice, lay unsheathed across his knees, the great length of Valyrian steel dark and rippled in the fading light. Bran hesitated at the edge of the clearing. When his father came here, it was usually alone. The old gods were not for spectacles. But Eddard must have heard him, for he spoke without turning. "Come here, Bran." His voice sounded different in the Godswood, softer somehow, as if the trees took half the weight from it. Bran came forward, hurrying a little, his boots sinking into the damp earth. He stopped beside his father and looked up at the heart tree. Its face, carved long before Bran's grandfather had been born, watched them with dark red eyes. Sap, or something like it, had run from the carved marks like frozen tears. "What do you see?" Eddard asked. Bran swallowed. The question felt like the beginning of a test he had not prepared for. "The tree," he said. "The face. And... Bran frowned. The wind stirred the leaves again, and for a strange, shivery second he thought he heard words in their rustle. Not words he could understand, only a cadence, a rhythm that hinted at something speaking in a language too old for his ears. He shivered. "It feels like the gods are watching." His father's hand came to rest on his shoulder. "Good," Eddard said. "Remember that." Bran looked at him. In the cold light, his father's face seemed carved from the same pale wood as the heart tree. "Father," he began, before his courage could fail. "When the king goes south again, when he goes back to King's Landing, can I go with you as your squire?" Eddard was silent for a long moment. A crow cawed somewhere above, unseen. The wind shifted, bringing the faint smell of snow from the north. "Why?" his father asked at last. "Because..." Bran's throat felt dry. He forced the words out. "Because I want to see more than Winterfell. I want to learn how knights fight in the south. I want to learn from Ser Roderick and from Ser Barristan and even from Ser Jaime Lannister. I want to be a knight one day, proper one. I can't do that if I never leave here." "You think knighthood lives only in King's Landing?" Eddard asked quietly. "You think honor wears a white cloak and stands behind a king who drinks too much and sees too little?" Bran shifted, stung. "I know it doesn't always," he said. "Jon says there are braver men in our guard than some of the southern knights." "He's right," Eddard said. "But there is more to the world than our yard. More to war and peace than what you've seen from the top of our walls." His grip on Bran's shoulder tightened, then eased. "You are young yet. I'm almost a man grown," Bran protested. It sounded foolish even to his own ears. "Almost," Eddard said, and there was a ghost of a smile. "You have a man's courage, at least. That can be both a gift and a curse." Bran thought of the moment on the wall when his mother had called and his fingers had slipped. His stomach tightened. "I don't want to fall," he said. "Not from a wall. Not in battle. I want to stand. Beside you. Beside Robb. I can help. I know I can." His father studied him for a long moment. Behind him, the carved face of the tree seemed to watch as well. Bran had the sudden, uneasy feeling that more than his father was weighing his words. "There was a time," Eddard said slowly, "when I would have given anything to keep my sons as boys in this castle, safe by the hearth, never knowing the taste of war. Is there not that time now?" Bran asked, bewildered. "There is no such time now," Eddard said. "The king comes north with more than love in his heart. He comes with burdens he means to lay on my shoulders. I do not know yet what shape they will take, only that they will be heavy." He looked away, toward the darkening sky. "If I take you south, Bran, you will see more than bright armor and songs. You will see men lie with smiles on their faces. You will see what oaths cost. You may see me fall." Bran's chest clenched. "You won't," he said, fierce. "You can't. Everyone falls," Eddard said, echoing Catelyn without meaning to. He bowed his head to the heart tree, his hair brushing Bran's cheek. "Even kings, even Starks." His hand tightened again. "But you are my son, and you have asked me plainly. That deserves a plain answer. I will speak with your mother, if the gods will it, and if she agrees, you may ride south with me as my page and squire." Joy surged through Bran so sharply it almost made him dizzy. He could scarcely believe he had heard correctly. "Truly?" he gasped. "Truly," Eddard said. "If." The word hung between them like a blade. "The South will not be what you imagine. Remember that." "I will," Bran said. He did not know how he could remember what he could not yet see. But he would try. He looked up at the heart tree. In the deepening dusk, the carved eyes seemed to glisten. The breeze stirred the red leaves, and Bran thought he heard something in their whisper again, something like a sigh. That night, Winterfell slept uneasily. The presence of the king and his court sat on the castle like a weight, pressing on the stones, seeping into the dreams of those within. Servants turned on their pallets, muttering. Guards checked door bolts twice over. Even the dire wolves whined in their sleep. In the Lord's chamber, the fire had burned down to glowing embers. Catelyn sat on the edge of the bed, her bare feet chilling against the rug, her hair unbound and falling in a dark river over her shoulders. Eddard stood by the narrow window, looking out at the courtyard where shadows moved, dim and indistinct. "He asks you to be hand," Catelyn said. It was not a question. She had known Robert would, from the moment she read the words in the Queen's brother's letter. There were some things only a fool could miss, and her husband was no fool. "He does," Eddard said. His voice was flat. "He says he is surrounded by flatterers and liars. He wants one honest man at his side. So he turns to the only one he knows," Catelyn said. She folded her hands in her lap to keep from wringing them. "Will you go?" He did not answer at once. The fire cracked softly. A draft slipped under the door, making the candle flame quiver. "The king is my friend," Eddard said at last. "He is also my king. I swore him my sword on the trident. Oaths are not cloth to be taken on and off as the mood suits." "I know what oaths are," Catelyn said. "I swore mine before a heart tree not unlike the one in our Godswood." He turned then, the lines around his mouth deepening. "If I refuse him, he will go south with only Lannisters to advise him. Cersei, her father, her brothers, you saw them today. You know what they are." "I know enough," Catelyn said. She had watched the Queen's eyes take the measure of everyone in the hall. She had seen the slight curl of her mouth when she spoke of the North's chill, the way her fingers tightened on her cup when Robert spoke too fondly of Lyanna. More than that, she had seen Tywin Lannister once, at a tourney in her youth, and his shadow had never quite left her. "If I go," Eddard said, "I may at least stand between Robert and the worst of their snares. He trusts me, for now. Perhaps I can keep him from stepping in traps he doesn't even see." "And if they set their traps for you?" Catelyn asked. "For our children?" Silence again. Ned's gaze flicked to the door that led to the adjoining chamber where Sansa and Arya slept. Beyond that, down another corridor, were the rooms where Robb and Bran and Jon lay. "They already have," he said quietly. "The moment he rode through our gates." Catelyn's throat tightened. "Bran came to you in the Godswood," she said. "He thinks I do not know, but he forgets who birthed him. He wants to go with you." "Yes," Eddard said. He asked plainly. "He wants to see the South. He wants to be my squire." Catelyn's heart lurched. "He is too young." "He is not," Eddard said gently. "Not by Southron standards. There are boys younger than he in squire's harness in the Vale and the Reach." "This is not the Vale or the Reach," Catelyn said sharply. "This is the North. Our sons hunt and ride and learn to rule their own lands, but they do not run off to King's Landing to be ornaments at court." "He would not be an ornament," Eddard said. "Not if I can help it." Catelyn rose, the furs of the bed rustling. "Ned, I know why you feel you must go. I know what your honor demands. But must you drag our children into it? Robb will be left to rule here. Jon." She hesitated over the name. "Jon has his place. Must Bran be caught between?" Eddard's eyes darkened. "I thought," he said quietly, "that you would want him near me if I go into danger, that you would rather he be where I can watch him than left to his own mischief here." She flinched. Images flickered through her mind. Bran's small form clinging to the stone of the wall, the long drop below. The thought of him falling clenched her stomach with a terror she could hardly name. She had seen too much falling in her life. "He climbs," she said. "He thinks himself invincible." as if some charm will keep his hands from slipping. Winterfell has been kinder to him than he deserves. The South will not be. Then perhaps, Eddard said. It is time he learned that lesson under my eye, rather than at the whim of the gods. She stared at him. In the years of their marriage, she had seen him stubborn in many things, gentle in others. This felt like both. His sense of duty warred with his instinct to protect, and sometimes she could not tell which would win. "Let me have him a little longer," she whispered. "Let me keep at least one of them a boy." He crossed the room to her, took her hands in his. His palms were calloused and cold. "If I could," he said, "I would keep them all children at your skirts forever. But the world is coming for them whether we open the gate or not. Robb must learn to rule. Jon must find his own path. Bran will not be content to sit in Winterfell's halls and hear stories of what other men did. You know that. You see it every time he scales a wall that should be beyond him." She closed her eyes. She saw him as he had been that afternoon, dirt on his face, hair wind-blown, eyes shining as he spoke of knights and kings. He was so keen to reach for the world. If she held him back too tightly, would he only strain harder and slip from her grasp entirely? "The gods keep him," she said hoarsely. "If you take him, the gods keep him." "The gods keep us all," Eddard said. He touched her cheek, rough thumb brushing away a tear she had not realized had fallen. "I will not let him fall, Cat." She wanted to believe that was a promise he could keep. The morning of departure dawned white and cold. Frost rimed the stones, and every breath smoked on the air. The sun had barely cleared the walls when the courtyard filled with horses and men, with clinking harness and muttered curses and the soft grunts of stable boys hauling packs. Bran's fingers fumbled at the buckles of his light leather, numb with cold and nerves both. The armor was new, made hurriedly in the days since the king's arrival, cut down from an older piece that had belonged to one of the guards. It still smelled of oil and fresh stitching. It felt strange on his shoulders, heavier than his usual wool, but also right, like something he had been waiting to wear. "Here," Robb said, stepping in to fasten the last strap. His own armor was heavier, a brigandine over mail, his father's direwolf on his chest. He looked older in it, more like the lord he would become. Bran glanced at Jon. His half-brother stood a little apart, dressed in black leathers, a plain cloak around his shoulders. Ghost was at his side, pale as fog, watching everything with those unsettling red eyes. "You should be coming with us," Bran blurted. The words had been sitting like a stone in his chest. Jon's mouth curved. "South," he said. "They've no need for bastards at court. Father made that clear enough." "That's not what I meant," Bran said quickly. "I meant, I don't want to leave you." Jon's gaze softened. For a heartbeat, the courtyard, the clatter and murmur, all faded. It was just the two of them, as in the yard with wooden swords, as on the wall with the wind in their hair. "I'm not staying," Jon said. Bran blinked. "I've spoken to Uncle Benjen. To ride with him to the wall, to take the black." The words hit Bran like a blow. "The black? But that's for..." He stopped himself too late. "For criminals and men who choose it," Jon said. There was a tightness around his mouth. "It's a place for someone like me. Somewhere I can be something other than the snow in the corner of the hall." "You're our brother," Bran said. "Your father's son." "I am," Jon said. "And that is part of why I must go. I don't belong here, Bran. Not truly. But on the wall, they say all men are equal when they stand atop it. Bastard or lordling, it doesn't matter. Only your sword." Bran's throat hurt. "I wanted to ride with you, learn from you. You've Ser Roderick," Jon said, "and father, and half the knights of the realm to look at and decide whether you want to be like them." He reached out and tugged gently at Bran's cloak. "You'll see more in King's Landing than I ever will. Remember what you see. Remember who you are when you see it." Bran swallowed hard. Will I see you again?" Jon's eyes flicked to the south, then to the north. "The paths of the gods are strange," he said. "The world is smaller than it seems when you're perched on a wall. We may meet again." He hesitated, then leaned in and pressed his forehead briefly to Bran's. It was as close to an embrace as he had ever given. "Keep your feet," he murmured. "Whatever happens, promise me." "I promise," Bran said. His voice shook. "Lord Bran," a groom shouted. "Your pony's ready." It wasn't a pony, not really. It was a small, sturdy Garen with a shaggy mane and patient eyes. Bran had ridden him in the Wolfswood, had raced him along the frozen streams. Today, for the first time, he would ride him away from Winterfell's protection, out into a world that seemed suddenly much larger. Eddard was already mounted on his great gray, ice hanging in its scabbard across his back. He spoke with King Robert near the gate, their breath mingling, crowns and furs touching. Catelyn stood by the steps, flanked by Sansa and Arya and Rickon, her face pale but composed. She had kissed Bran's brow earlier, fingers lingering as if she would memorize the shape of his skull. Bran swung into the saddle. The leather creaked. The world looked different from that height. The courtyard spread beneath him like a game board. He took a deep breath and settled his feet in the stirrups. He thought of walls he had climbed, ledges he had trusted. This was another kind of height, but he would not fall from it either. Robb mounted beside him, their knees almost touching. "Ready?" he asked. "Yes," Bran said. Felt like a lie and the truth together. The column formed. Guards at the front and rear, pack horses in the middle, wagons creaking. The king's party would follow later, slower with its wagons and ladies. For now, Eddard and a chosen escort rode ahead to clear the road and make arrangements. Bran was among them, a small figure in leather and wool, his heart pounding time with his horse's hooves. The gates of Winterfell yawned before them, iron-bound and massive. Bran had ridden through them before on hunts, on visits to nearby holds. But knowing he might not pass back through them for years made them seem different now. The world beyond felt like the top of a wall. Open, dangerous, irresistible. He turned in his saddle for one last look. Catelyn stood like a statue of herself, hand raised. Sansa's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Arya scowled stubbornly to hide her own. Rickon waved both arms, shouting something Bran could not hear. Above them all, on the ramparts, ravens perched in a ragged line, black against the pale sky. One took wing as Bran watched, circling once above the yard before beating its way south. They rode out under a sky the color of steel. The air tasted of iron and snow. The road that had brought the king north now carried a Stark south, and with him went more than baggage and provisions. Bran felt the weight of unseen things pressing on his shoulders. His father's expectations, his mother's fears, his own bright, burning dreams. The sound of hooves on frozen earth settled into a rhythm. The walls of Winterfell receded behind them, shrinking from towering stone to a jagged line to a smudge on the horizon. The farther they went, the more the world opened. Fields lying fallow for winter, low hills dusted with frost, stands of bare-branched trees where crows flapped, scattering at their approach. Bran's thighs burned after the first hour, his back twinged after the second, but he said nothing. He kept his gaze forward, on his father's broad back, on the gray horse's sure feet. When he allowed himself to glance aside, he saw the men of Winterfell's guard riding with grim, familiar faces, their cloaks drawn tight, hands never far from hilts. He wondered what they thought of him, the boy allowed to ride out with them on what could prove to be the most dangerous journey of their lives. He turned once, just once, in the saddle. Winterfell lay behind him, already softened by distance. For a heartbeat, homesickness stabbed him, fierce and unexpected. He thought of the warm kitchens, of old Nan's stories by the hearth, of the Godswood's rustling leaves and the feel of rough stone under his palms. He imagined himself on the wall again, looking down at riders departing, and wondered what that Bran would have thought of this one. "You are the same boy," he told himself, "only higher up." A flurry of snow drifted down, soft and tentative. A few flakes landed on his gloved hand, melting slow. Bran squinted up at the sky. The clouds had thickened, a low ceiling through which the sun burned only faintly. Ahead, his father raised a hand, signaling a brief halt at a crossroads where a lone, twisted oak grew. Bran reined in beside him, grateful for the moment's respite. "Your seat is good," Eddard said, glancing at him. "You do not bounce like a sack of oats." Bran straightened. "Jon taught me," he said, "and Hodder, and the grooms. Listen to them when they correct you," Eddard said. "You will spend much of your life in a saddle if the gods are kind. Better to make it an ally than an enemy." Bran watched his father's face, trying to read what lay beneath the calm. "Are you glad I came?" he asked suddenly. "Or do you wish you had left me with Mother?" His father was silent for a long moment. The wind tugged at his hair. A raven croaked from the oak, shifting its weight from one branch to another, head cocked as if listening. "At the Trident," Eddard said finally, "I saw boys not much older than you cut down because they dreamed of glory and knew nothing of what lay behind it. I swore then I would spare you that, if I could, that you would not see war before you were ready. And now?" Bran asked. "Now," Eddard said, "the world does not ask what I swore. It presses in on all sides, with a mad king's memory and a restless queen and a friend who hides his fear behind wine. If I do not let you see some of it now, it will crash over you later without warning." He looked at Bran, truly looked, his pale eyes clear. "I am glad you are here, and I am afraid. Both can be true." Bran swallowed. The honesty in his father's voice steadied him more than any hollow reassurance would have. "I won't fall," he said. Felt like an answer to more than one question. Eddard's mouth twitched. "Mind you do not," he said. He nudged his horse forward. "Come." There is a long road yet before King's Landing, and the first watchful eyes we must pass belong not to Lannisters, but to men who have their own grievances with the crown. Bran nudged his own mount to follow. The column moved again, hoofs crunching softly on the dusting of snow. The twisted oak and its raven fell behind. The road bent south, disappearing into the gray distance. Above them, a small flock of ravens took to the air, circling once, twice, before streaming after the riders as if drawn by some thread. Bran watched them until his neck ached. There was a prickling at the back of his mind, a sense as if something somewhere had taken note of him. A boy who had not fallen when he might have. A boy who had chosen the saddle over the tower, the sword over the tree. The feeling vanished as quickly as it had come. Bran shook his head, settled his hands on the reins, and rode on, unaware of how much had already changed because his fingers had held true to stone when his mother called his name. By the second day on the Kingsroad, the party from Winterfell had been swallowed by the king's greater train like a stream joining a river. Where there had been only gray cloaks and plain leather before, now bright color moved all around Bran. Lannister crimson, Baratheon black and gold, Tyrell green and gold, a dozen lesser banners he did not yet know. The road itself, a hard-packed scar through the trees, seemed barely broad enough for them all. His Garen plodded gamely, ears twitching. Bran's thighs ached in a dull, constant way now, and there was a place between his shoulders that twinged every time he shifted his weight. He kept his teeth clenched and his back straight. He would not ask to stop. Men looked at him now with a kind of measuring curiosity, the Stark boy-squire riding where he had no need to, not in the warm safety of a wagon but in the line of dust and sweat. Ahead, his father rode beside King Robert, their horses shoulder to shoulder. Sometimes they spoke in low voices that did not carry back to Bran. Sometimes they rode in silence, each lost in his own thoughts. When Robert laughed, it rolled back over the company like thunder, startling birds from the trees. Behind them, the queen traveled in a high-wheeled wheelhouse draped with curtains. Gold lions snarled from its panels, worked in relief by a craftsman's hand. It creaked and swayed, drawn by a team of matched white horses. Sansa rode near it under the watchful eye of Septa Mordane, her posture perfect despite the jouncing, her smile a little tight whenever the curtains stirred and Cersei's pale face appeared. Arya was nowhere near the wheelhouse. She rode a shaggy brown horse midway down the column, hair perpetually escaping the braids Sansa had attempted, eyes bright as she watched the world on either side of the road. She had a stick thrust through her belt that she insisted was a sword, and she ignored the Septa's shrill protests as easily as she ignored the court lady's whispers. Now and then, Bran managed to angle his Garen close enough to ride beside her. The press of riders made it difficult. Lannister men-at-arms in crimson cloaks flowed around them like a tide, pushing him away, then back. Somewhere in that red current rode Jaime Lannister, gold among scarlet, and the white cloaks of the Kingsguard. Bran caught glimpses of them. A flash of enameled plate, the glint of a lion-headed pommel, the fall of a pale cape. It made the stories feel closer, somehow to ride in the same dust. Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, Aemon the Dragon Knight, Lionel Baratheon the Laughing Storm. They were all dead, but they had ridden these same roads once, had eaten under these same trees. Bran tried to imagine them ghosting alongside the column, invisible to everyone but him. "Stop staring," one of the guards beside him muttered. Heward, a square-shouldered man with a scar along his jaw. "You'll break your neck if you ride straight into a tree." Bran jerked his gaze forward. "I wasn't going to," he said. "Never think you're the first boy to get lost in a dream on the road," Heward said. His tone was not unkind. "Dream all you like at night. By day, watch where your horse puts his feet and where other men's hands go. Southrons steal more with a smile than with a blade." Bran frowned. "They haven't stolen anything," he said. Heward snorted. "Not yet," he said. "That you see." The road wound through a stand of leafless oaks, their branches black against the gray sky. Crows sat in them like lumps of shadow, watching the procession with bright, beady eyes. The air smelled of damp earth and horse sweat and the faint, sour tang of the latrine wagons that trundled along behind. A shout went up ahead. The column slowed. Bran craned his neck. Through the trees, the land dipped toward a shallow stream with a gravel bed. The king had raised a hand, pointing to the water. Men peeled off to either side, making for the bank. Horses tossed their heads, eager for a drink. Heward grunted. "Watering the horses," he said. "About time. My arse has forgotten what standing feels like." Bran slid his feet from the stirrups as they came to a halt, flexing his knees. The relief was immediate and wonderful. He inhaled deeply, the smell of water and wet stones a blessed change from dust. "Stay close," Heward reminded him as he swung down. "There are more dangers on a road than bandits." Bran nodded, but his attention had already been caught by movement near the stream. The royal children dismounting, their bright cloaks fluttering, their laughter carrying faintly over the murmur of voices. He saw Joffrey's golden head, Myrcella's pale hair, Tommen's round, earnest face. Sandor Clegane loomed nearby like a dark cliff, helm under one arm, the burned half of his face turned away. For a moment, Bran hesitated. He was Lord Stark's son. He should stay with the northern men, help check the horses' tack, listen for orders. But he was also a boy, and the pull of new faces and possible friendship tugged at him like a tide. He patted his Garen's sweaty neck. "Stay," he murmured, as if the horse were a dog. Then he set off toward the stream. The stream was not much more than a wide trickle, shallow enough that a man could cross without wetting his knees. Horses lined its banks, heads down as they drank, steam rising faintly from their flanks. Men filled waterskins, splashed their faces, stretched their backs with groans of relief. On one end of the clearing, away from the press of animals, the royal children had claimed a space of their own. Joffrey stood with his boots planted on a flat rock, one hand on the pommel of the sword at his hip. It was a real blade, steel polished to a shine, though shorter than a man's sword. Myrcella and Tommen stood a little behind him, the girl's cloak a pale blue, the boy's cheeks red from the chill. A few yards away, Arya faced a boy Bran did not know. He was taller than Arya by half a head, lean and wiry, with straw-colored hair and a patched tunic. He held a stout stick in both hands. Arya's own stick, her pretend sword, was raised in front of her. Like this, the boy was saying. See? If you keep your hands closer together, you can. He broke off when he saw Bran. For a moment, he looked as if he might bolt. Then Arya whipped her head around. Bran! She called, delighted. Come help us. Micah says I'm holding it wrong. Bran trotted closer, keenly aware of the eyes that flicked to him. Joffrey's gaze was cool and assessing. Myrcella's was curious. Tommen smiled shyly and ducked his head. Micah, Bran repeated. He's the butcher's boy, Arya said, as if that explained everything. He knows about knives and things. We're practicing. Micah shifted his weight. My lady asked, he mumbled, eyes dropping. I meant no. It's all right, Bran said quickly. I won't tell Septa Mordain. He shot Arya a conspiratorial grin. Show me. Arya beamed and swung her stick. It was a wild blow, half swing, half lunge, her feet out of line. Micah laughed and caught it on his own with a crack. No, like I said, he said. You'll fall on your face if you lean that far. Bran watched, his own hand itching for a practice sword. He could see what Micah meant. Arya threw all her weight into each strike, overbalancing herself. It was brave but foolish, something Ser Roderick would have rapped his knuckles for. You should keep your back foot under you, Bran said. Father's arms master says so you can push forward or back quick. Arya scowled. I am keeping it under me. You are not. Came a new voice, high and edged with disdain. Joffrey had descended from his rock. He approached with the lazy grace of someone used to others moving aside. You're flailing like a stable girl with a broom. Arya stiffened. Color rose in her cheeks. What would you know? She shot back. You've never seen me practice. I've seen enough, Joffrey said. His hand rested on his sword hilt. Real knights don't wave sticks at each other in the mud. They train with steel, and with those who are their equals. Arya's mouth tightened. Bran is my equal, she said. And Micah is too. Joffrey's lip curled. He's a butcher's whelp, he said. His equal is a pig. Micah flushed darkly and looked down. Bran felt anger spark in his chest. You shouldn't talk about him like that, he said before he could stop himself. He's helping Arya. Joffrey turned his gaze on Bran. Up close, his eyes were a strange, pale green, like his mother's but colder. And who are you to tell me what I should do? He asked softly. Bran Stark, Bran said, came out more stiff than he intended. Son of Lord Eddard. The middle one, Joffrey said. Not the heir, not the bastard. His eyes flicked briefly, dismissively, toward the Northmen by the horses. Just another pup yapping at my heels. Tommen shifted uncomfortably. Joff, don't, he murmured. Father said we were to be. Be silent, Joffrey snapped without looking at him. Tommen fell quiet at once, his mouth pressing into a thin line. Bran felt his face heat. Part of him wanted to back down, to mutter an apology and slink away. Another part, the part that had clung to Winterfell's walls and stood his ground against Ser Roderick's blade, would not let him. You're the king's son, Bran said. That doesn't mean you can be cruel. Myrcella's eyes widened. Arya made a small, delighted sound, quickly smothered. For a heartbeat, the clearing held its breath. Joffrey's hand tightened on his sword. Cruel, he said. You speak of cruelty to me, wolf pup? Perhaps you need a lesson in what a prince can do. The sound of steel leaving leather was quiet, but it cut straight through Bran. Joffrey drew his sword only half from its scabbard at first, as if tasting the air. The bare portion of the blade gleamed, catching what little light filtered through the trees. Micah took a stumbling step back. My prince, he stammered. I meant no. Did I give you leave to speak? Joffrey asked. His voice had gone very soft. Did I ask a pig to grunt? Bran moved without thinking. He stepped in front of Micah, shoulder brushing Arya's. She had her stick up like a sword, knuckles white. He could feel her trembling through the wood. Leave him alone, Arya said. Her voice wavered but did not break. "We were just playing. Playing at swords," Joffrey said. "With my betrothed sister. That is treason, I think. Or something like it." "You made that up," Arya said. "Did I?" Joffrey tilted his head. "Do you think it matters? Treason is what a prince says it is, until the king disagrees." He slid the sword the rest of the way free. It was a beautiful thing. A tooled grip, a crossguard shaped like twin lions' paws. "Here, I'll give you a true lesson." He advanced, slow at first, letting the tip of the blade trace idle patterns in the air. The march of men behind them seemed suddenly very far away, the murmur of voices muffled. Bran's heartbeat drummed in his ears. "Stop it," Myrcella said softly. "Joff, stop. You're frightening them." "I'm teaching them," Joffrey said. He flicked his sword, so fast the point was a blur, and knocked Arya's stick aside. It spun from her hands and landed in the mud. She gasped, more in outrage than fear. "Give that back," she cried. "Come take it," Joffrey said. He feinted toward Arya, then turned the thrust toward Micah at the last instant. The butcher's boy squeaked and stumbled, nearly falling into the stream as the blade scraped his tunic and nicked the skin beneath. A thin line of red welled up. "Stop!" Bran shouted. He lunged, shoving at Joffrey's arm. He had not expected the prince to be so solid. Joffrey staggered but did not fall, his sword arm swinging wide. The tip of the blade grazed Bran's sleeve, slicing fabric and raising a sting on the flesh below. Joffrey's eyes went flat and cold. "You cur," he said finally. "You rabid northern cur." Bran's chest heaved. His hands stung. He could feel his own heartbeat in every finger. "You were going to hurt her," he said. His voice shook with anger and something like fear. "You were going to hurt him. That's not what knights do." Joffrey's face twisted. "I am a prince," he hissed. "I will be king. I will do whatever I like." He drew back his hand to strike Bran across the face. He never landed the blow. Something blurred between them. A streak of gray and white fur. Teeth flashed. Joffrey screamed as jaws closed on his wrist. Nymeria hit like a thrown boulder. One moment Joffrey's hand was raised, fingers curled. The next it was in a direwolf's mouth, his shriek cutting the air like a knife. Blood spurted in a bright, shocking arc, spattering the stones and Arya's boots. "Nymeria!" Arya cried, a sound half command, half plea. The wolf growled, low and furious, shaking her head once. Joffrey went to his knees with an undignified sob, his free hand clawing at Nymeria's ear. She ignored him, jaws locked. "Nymeria, leave him," Arya shouted. "Leave him, girl." Bran's limbs felt slow and heavy, as if he were moving through water. He saw Tommen's round face gone white, Myrcella with her hands clapped to her mouth, Micah pressed flat to the ground, eyes huge. He saw Sandor Clegane launching himself forward, long strides eating the distance, his burnt face savage. Nymeria's ears flicked. She released Joffrey's wrist with a final shake and sprang back, teeth red. The prince cradled his arm to his chest, sobbing thinly now, blood running between his fingers. Sandor reached for the wolf, but she was already moving. She darted past Bran so close he felt her fur brush his leg, then streaked into the undergrowth. For a heartbeat, their eyes met, yellow and wild and utterly unrepentant. Then she was gone, swallowed by the trees. "After it," Joffrey gasped, voice high with pain and fury. "Kill that beast. Kill it." Sandor hesitated only long enough to glance at Arya, at Bran, at the blood on the stones. Something hard flickered in his eyes. Then he turned and plunged into the bushes, sword in hand, his hounds breaking from the shadows to follow. Guards converged on the clearing, drawn by the commotion. They parted around the small knot of royal blood and wolf-touched stones like water around a rock. Some went to one knee beside Joffrey, trying to examine his wound. Others formed a ring, hands on hilts, eyes scanning the tree line for another attack. "What happened?" One of the king's household knights barked. "What in the seven hells?" "It attacked me," Joffrey cried, pointing with his uninjured hand at Arya, at Bran, at the place where Nymeria had been. Their wolf, the girl's wolf. They set it on me. That's not true, Arya snapped. Her voice shook, but there was iron in it. You were hurting Micah. You were going to hurt Bran. Nymeria was protecting us. The knight's gaze flicked to Bran. My lord? He asked, tone tight. Bran opened his mouth. The words jammed in his throat. He saw again the blade raised over Arya, the white knuckles on its hilt, the disdain in Joffrey's eyes. He saw Nymeria's teeth, the blood, the way the prince had screamed like any frightened boy. Bran swallowed. He drew first. On Arya. On Micah. Joffrey's head snapped toward him. For a moment, there was something naked and ugly in his expression. Some mix of pain and humiliation and rage. You lie, he spat. You filthy northern liar. I will tell my mother. I will tell the king. You'll lose your heads for this. Tommen stepped forward, face strained. He did draw first, he said very quietly. Joff, Shut up. Joffrey lunged, as if to strike him with his free hand, but pain stole his strength. He sagged instead, groaning. Blood still dripped from his fingers. My prince, we must see to that wound, one of the Lannister guards said. He wrapped a kerchief around Joffrey's wrist, the cloth turning red almost at once. We must take you to the maester. Joffrey allowed himself to be lifted, though his mouth never ceased moving. He hurled words back at Arya and Bran, threats and insults, names fit for gutters, not princes, until distance and the press of bodies swallowed them. In the sudden lull, Arya looked at Bran. Her eyes were wide, her face pale beneath its sprinkling of freckles. She still held her stick, though she had forgotten to raise it again. It wasn't Nymeria's fault, she whispered. She was just trying to help. I know, Bran said. His voice felt small in the aftermath of Joffrey's shouting. He glanced at Micah, who had pulled himself upright and was staring after the retreating prince with something like horror. Are you hurt? Micah shook his head. His tunic was torn, and there were smears of blood on his chest, but the cut beneath was shallow. He'll have my hide, he whispered. He'll have my father's shop. He'll. Arya grabbed his sleeve. Run, she said suddenly. Run, Micah. Hide in the woods until we've gone. Micah blinked at her. My lady. You heard him, she said. He'll tell the queen. She'll blame you. Run. Micah looked at Bran as if for confirmation, as if the boy's lordling blood might somehow make sense of this madness. Bran nodded, throat tight. Go, he said. Go now, before the hound comes back. Micah hesitated only a heartbeat longer. Then he turned and bolted, crashing through the brush. His thin form swallowed by the trees in the direction opposite Nymeria's flight. Arya watched him go. Her hand trembled on the stick. We have to tell father, Bran said. His heart pounded with a new, colder fear now. Not of Joffrey's sword, or even his mother's wrath, but of something bigger, of what it meant to have raised a wolf's teeth against the future king. We have to tell him everything. The quarrel was drawn into the king's tent as inevitably as a blade to a whetstone. By dusk, the camp had settled into its own rough order. A ring of fires, the smell of stew and smoke, the low murmur of men's voices, but tension ran through it like a tightened wire. Everywhere Bran looked, he saw glances flicked toward the royal pavilion, heard half-whispered speculations. The summons came as the light was failing. A Lannister guard in crimson and gold found them by the Stark fire and inclined his head with stiff politeness. Her grace requires the presence of the Lord Stark's children, he said, and the Lord Stark himself. Catelyn was not there to press Bran's shoulder, to tell him to hold his tongue. Eddard's hand on his back served instead as they approached the tent. It was a firm weight, a silent command. Inside, the air was thick with the smells of wine and wax and a faint, sour tang beneath. The king sat in a carved camp chair that might as well have been a throne, his bulk spilling over the edges. He held a cup in one hand, staring into it as if the answer to some riddle lay at the bottom. Cersei stood at his right, rigid as drawn steel. By her side, Joffrey sat on a low stool, his injured wrist bandaged and bound in clean linen. His face was pale, lips pressed tight, eyes bright with anger and unshed tears. Sandor Clegane stood in the shadows behind them, hounds at his heels. Blood darkened the muzzle of one of the dogs. Arya's fingers tightened around Bran's when she saw it. Eddard bowed briefly. "Your Grace," he said. "Tell me this is some misunderstanding," Robert said without preamble. His voice was slurred at the edges. "Tell me my son did not pull steel on your girl and a butcher's boy." Cersei's eyes flashed. "Your son was attacked," she said. "By a wolf. A dire wolf," Joffrey snapped. "Her dire wolf." "And by the hand's wild daughter," Cersei finished smoothly, ignoring the interruption. "And by his son. Is this how the North shows gratitude for royal favor? By setting beasts on the heir to the Iron Throne?" Bran felt every eye in the tent slide toward him and Arya. His mouth went dry. "My children are not beasts," Eddard said, his voice flat and dangerous. "Nor do they command the direwolves like hounds in a ring." "They do," Joffrey said. "She set the wolf on me. She and that boy. They attacked me." "That's a lie," Arya burst out. "You're a liar." "Arya," Eddard said sharply. The single word stopped her as surely as a hand on her shoulder. Robert rubbed at his temples. "7 hells," he muttered. "You'd think I'd ridden north to a nest of vipers, not a friend's hall." Cersei's gaze did not leave Arya's face. "Let the girl speak," she said. "I should like to hear what story she spins to excuse treachery." Bran felt Arya tremble beside him. He stepped half a pace forward, drawing the queen's eyes to himself. "He drew first," he said. His voice sounded thin in the heavy air. "Prince Joffrey, on Arya, on Micah." He called Micah names. He cut him. "Nymeria came because he was hurting us. We didn't set her on him. She was protecting us." "She's right," Tommen said softly from near the tent wall, where he had tried to make himself small. Myrcella stood beside him, fingers twisted in his sleeve. "Joff did draw first, father. I saw." "Tommen," Cersei snapped. "Not another word." Robert looked between his sons. Something like sorrow flickered briefly in his heavy features. "Gods," he said. "Small wonder the realm's a mess if children tell more truth than their mothers." Cersei's lips thinned. "The truth is that my son was mauled," she said. "By that beast and by these wild northern brats. The butcher's boy ran. The wolf ran. There must be punishment. There must be justice." "Justice," Eddard repeated. His eyes dropped to Joffrey's bandaged wrist. "My son should not have put his hands on the prince. For that, I will see him whipped, if your grace insists. The girl has always been wild. That is my failing." He glanced briefly at Arya, then back to the king. "But if there is fault in this, it lies also with your son." Cersei's eyes went cold as river ice. "You would dare." "Enough," Robert thundered. His cup slammed down, slopping wine. "Enough of this. I will not sit in judgment on the pranks of children. Let it be done with." "It cannot be done," Cersei said very softly. "Not until the wolf is punished." Robert frowned. "The wolf fled," he said. "I'm told your hound hunted half the day and found nothing but tracks." Sandor inclined his head. "She's a smart one," he said. "Knows when to run." His gaze flicked to Arya. "Pity her mistress doesn't." Cersei turned to Robert, laying a hand lightly on his arm. "There are other wolves," she said. "They have another, the red-haired girls. Kill that one." Sansa made a strangled sound. Bran's stomach lurched. "Lady never bit anyone," Sansa said, her voice strangled. She had been summoned too, and now stood stiffly between Septa Mordane and Jory Castle. Her hands curled in her skirts. She's gentle. She wouldn't hurt a fly." "Then she won't feel it," Cersei said. Her gaze was fixed on Robert. "Your Grace." The prince's blood was spilled. There must be a price. Or what message do we send? That a wolf may taste royal flesh with impunity. Silence fell. Robert stared into his cup as if he wished himself anywhere else. It's a damned wolf, he muttered. A dog. We have more pressing matters then. Do we? Cersei asked. Or is this the first lesson your son learns? That he may be attacked and his attackers suffer no consequence if they are dear to you. Robert's jaw worked. He looked away toward Eddard. For a heartbeat, they were not king and hand to be, but two men who had once stood shoulder to shoulder in blood and mud. Gods forgive me, Robert said. Ned, I cannot fight this battle. Not over a wolf. Do this for me, as a favor between old friends. Make it quiet. Make it quick. Eddard's face went very still. For a long moment he did not move. Then he inclined his head once, the motion brittle. As you command, your grace, he said. Sansa made a sound like something breaking. Arya's hand flew to her mouth. Bran felt sick. They brought Lady out of the camp quietly, so that the queen need not hear her howl. Bran was not supposed to be there. Eddard had ordered him to stay with the others, to keep to the Stark fire and mind his sisters. But sleep had fled him, and the thought of the doom that hung over Sansa's wolf was like a stone on his chest. When he saw Jory leading the pale-furred direwolf away between the tents, Lady walking with her usual untroubled grace, he could not help himself. He followed, silent as he could, keeping to the shadows. They went beyond the circle of fires, past the picket lines and latrine pits, to a small hollow screened by trees. The moon hung low and thin between the branches, casting more shadow than light. The sounds of the camp were muffled, distant. A murmur of voices, the occasional snort from a horse, a burst of laughter that died quickly. Lady patted at Jory's side, ears pricked, tongue lolling slightly. She did not seem afraid. Why should she? Her world had been Winterfell stone and snow and the gentle hands of the girl she had chosen. Men had petted her, fed her scraps, scratched her behind the ears. She had never been beaten, never been chained. The smell of blood in the hound's jaws meant nothing to her. Eddard was waiting in the clearing. He stood alone, cloak drawn tight, ice in his hand. The great sword's dark, rippled steel drank the moonlight rather than reflecting it. For a heartbeat, Bran saw his father as a headsman, not a lord. The man who had stood in the yard of Winterfell and swung that blade to take the head of a deserter from the Night's Watch. His breath caught. He knew, suddenly and with painful clarity, what his father intended. Lady's head lifted. She scented the air, recognizing a familiar smell. Her tail wagged once. She trotted forward, leaving Jory's side, and went to Eddard, bumping his hand with her muzzle. Bran's vision blurred. He pressed himself back against the rough bark of a tree, fingers digging into the trunk. He did not dare step into the clearing. He did not dare draw attention and risk his father sending him away, and yet every fiber in him screamed to run forward, to throw his arms around the direwolf's neck, to shout that it was wrong, wrong. Eddard knelt, setting ice down for a moment. His hand sank into Lady's thick fur, fingers curling into it. He bowed his head, his forehead resting briefly against the wolf's. Bran had never seen his father embrace any beast so, save maybe his own horse after a long ride. "I am sorry, girl," Eddard murmured. The words carried just enough for Bran to hear. "You have done no wrong, but the king orders and the hand obeys. That is the way of it." Lady licked his cheek. Eddard drew a breath, shuddering. He picked up ice. Jory shifted, looking away. His jaw was tight. He had his hand on his sword, but he did not draw it. This duty was not his. Bran bit his knuckle to keep from making a sound. Tears slid hot down his face, freezing in the cold air almost as soon as they fell. Ice rose. For an instant, the blade caught a sliver of moon. Then it fell swift and sure. Lady did not have time to be afraid. The sound was sickeningly soft. A thud, a final exhale. Silence rushed in on its heels, loud as a roar. Eddard stayed where he was for a long moment, head bowed, the sword tip resting on the ground. Bran thought of the Godswood, of his father's prayers under the heart tree. He wondered if the old gods heard this too, if the weirwoods in the distant north shivered as a wolf's blood soaked southern soil. At last, Eddard rose. His face, when he turned, was carved stone. Only his eyes betrayed him. They were darker than Bran had ever seen them, the pain in them bottomless. He spoke without looking at Jory. "Burn the body," he said. "We will not leave her for crows." "Yes, my lord," Jory said softly. Eddard wiped ice clean on the hem of his cloak. A small defiance, Bran thought dimly, that he would not use the wolf's fur for that task. Then he turned toward the trees. For a heartbeat, Bran was sure his father would see him, that those pale eyes would fix on his hiding place and draw him out like a child caught spying at the door. But Eddard walked past, his gaze turned inward, and did not notice the boy pressed against the tree. Bran watched him go until the darkness swallowed him. Only then did he slide down the trunk, his legs no longer able to hold him. He sat in the cold leaf litter, arms wrapped around his knees, and cried for the wolf that had never hurt anyone, and for the world that demanded her death anyway. King's Landing announced itself first by smell. Days passed. Forest gave way to scrub, scrub to fields, fields to stony, overworked soil. Villages thickened along the road. More people spilling from doorways to watch the royal column pass. More ragged children running alongside to gape at the gleam of armor and the flash of banners. The air grew warmer, the wind losing its northern bite and taking on a damp, heavy feel that made Bran's tunic cling to his back with sweat. One morning, as the sky paled and the sun was just a hint beyond the hills, Bran woke to a sour tang in his nose that made him wrinkle it. It was a mix of many things. Smoke, dung, rotting vegetables, something faintly chemical and unpleasant. It grew stronger as they rode. By mid-morning, they crested a rise, and Bran saw the city. King's Landing sprawled along the shore like some vast, ungainly beast, its walls encircling a tumble of red-tiled roofs and whitewashed houses. Smoke rose from 100 chimneys, merging into a low gray haze that hung over the rooftops. Beyond, the sea glittered palely, ships like toys bobbing in the harbor, masts crowded together like a forest stripped of leaves. On the height above the city, the Red Keep loomed. Its red stone towers and curtain walls caught the morning light, turning them the color of dried blood. Banners snapped from its battlements. The crowned stag of Baratheon, the lion of Lannister, a scattering of lesser heraldry. From this distance, it seemed unassailable, a crown upon a man's brow, daring the world to dislodge it. Bran pulled his Garen to a halt beside his father, his mouth slightly open. "It's huge," he said inadequately. Eddard's gaze was fixed on the city. His face gave little away. "It is," he said, "and crowded, and filthy, and dangerous." Robb, who had ridden out to meet them with a small escort sent by Catelyn's cousin in the Vale, shook his head. "I pity the man who has to clean those streets," he muttered. Robert, farther ahead with his own men, laughed as he lifted a wineskin. "There she is," he boomed. "My home, my lovely, stinking, treacherous home." He drank deep, as if he needed the wine to wash the taste of the words away. Bran could not take his eyes from the Red Keep. Winterfell was broad and low, its strength in its thick walls and layered defenses. The Red Keep was all height and angles, towers jutting like spears, its color too bright to be entirely natural. It looked like something out of one of Old Nan's darker tales. "Remember what I told you," Eddard said quietly to Bran. "This is not Winterfell. Trust fewer smiles. Listen more than you speak. And do not let the brightness of armor blind you to the man inside it." "Yes, father," Bran said. He tried to settle the unease that had taken root in his stomach. He thought of Lady, of Nymeria running free somewhere in the wild, of the way Joffrey had looked at him as the wolf's teeth closed on his flesh. A wolf among lions, he thought suddenly. That was what he would be here, his father's son, carrying the north with him into a den built of stone and gold and secrets. The column moved again. As they descended the hill, The smell of the city grew stronger, the noise louder. The distant clamor of bells, the roar of many voices, the clatter of carts over cobbles. Bran tightened his grip on the reins and rode down toward King's Landing, feeling the road tilt beneath him as if he were once more on a wall, the fall below hidden but no less real. The city swallowed them with open jaws. The Kingsroad narrowed as it approached the walls, funneling men and horses and wagons toward massive oak gates banded with iron. Above, archers watched from crenellations, their bows unstrung but close to hand. The stone of the walls was weathered and stained, bearing the scars of a siege long past. Bran craned his neck as they passed beneath the gate arch, eyeing the murder holes overhead. He imagined boiling oil or stones raining down, felt a shiver even as the crowd's roar washed over him. The people of King's Landing pressed against hastily erected barriers lining the street inside the gate. They were a patchwork of rags and threadbare cloaks, stained tunics and faded dresses. Children perched on barrels and crates for a better view, their faces smudged with soot and dirt. Women craned their necks. Men called out jests and curses and blessings alike. Long live the king! Some shouted, voices hoarse. Bread! Others cried. Bread and work! A few saw the lion banners and cheered for Lannister, their voices high and thin. A handful of northerners in worn cloaks lifted tentative fists for Stark when they recognized the direwolf. Their cheers were fewer, but Bran heard them more clearly than all the rest. The smell was overwhelming up close. Human waste, rotting refuse, unwashed bodies, the tang of tanneries and slaughterhouses. It layered over the more familiar sense of horses and sweat and oiled leather until Bran felt a little sick. Flies buzzed in thick clouds around overflowing gutters. He saw a dead dog in the gutter, bloated and stiff, a child reaching out with a stick to poke at it until a woman cuffed him away. Beside him, a knight in green and gold wrinkled his nose. By the mother's grace, he muttered. Every time I return, I remember why I'm glad of my country estates. Hold your tongue, another hissed. Walls have ears here. Bran felt eyes on him from the crowd. A little girl with tangled hair and no shoes stared, her gaze moving from his leather jerkin to the small direwolf badge on his breast. Her lips moved, forming the word quietly, wolf. He felt a sudden urge to dismount, to hand her something. A crust of bread, a coin, anything. But the press of the column carried him on. Above the crush, Lannister horsemen rode with drawn swords held point up, their faces set. They watched the crowd, not as men greeting their own folk, but as jailers eyeing prisoners. Bran saw one such guard strike out with the flat of his blade at a hand that reached too far, knocking a man back into his neighbors. The man swore, but no one took up the cry. The guard's hands tightened on hilts. The street climbed as they moved deeper into the city, away from the reek of the docks and the noise of the gates. Houses leaned over the road, their upper stories nearly touching in places, making a tunnel of timber and plaster. Laundry hung from lines strung between them like flags of surrender. Voices echoed strangely in the narrow space. Bran felt closed in, the press of walls on either side, the crush of bodies behind. Winterfell's yards had space, sky above and Godswood beyond. Here, the sky was an irregular strip between roofs, and the trees he saw were spindly, cramped things, their leaves dusty and sparse. You'll get used to it, Jory called back to him over the clatter. The first time chokes everyone. After that, you just learn to breathe through your mouth. I like my nose, Bran said, trying for levity and managing only a weak smile. Jory grinned briefly. Keep your eyes open, he advised. You'll see sights you won't believe, not all of them bad. Bran tried. Amid the filth and poverty, there were flashes of color and life. A group of mummers in gaudy paint tumbling for coins, their laughter high. A baker's stall where fresh bread steamed, the smell a brief oasis of comfort. A sept with its 7-pointed star carved above the door, candles flickering inside. A boy no older than Bran himself juggling apples atop a barrel, his hands quick and sure. They climbed, always up, toward the Red Keep. The higher they went, the finer the buildings became. The stink lessened, though it never quite left. The people along the road were better dressed now, their clothes clean, their faces plumper. They watched from balconies and open windows, goblets in hand, their curiosity tinged with calculation. At last, the Red Keep's outer gate loomed before them, its red stone washed bright in the sunlight. Gold cloaks, the city watch, stood in formation, their cloaks a mustard yellow, their halberds gleaming. Behind them, the castle's walls and towers rose like a second, more refined set of fangs within the city's mouth. Bran took a deep breath as they rode under the gate into the cool shadow of the tunnel. Winterfell was behind him, the Kingsroad a memory. Ahead lay a den of lions. The Red Keep had its own rhythms, its own heartbeats. There were the formal pulses, the ringing of bells for council or supper, the changing of the guard, the clatter of hooves in the outer yard when messengers rode in. Then there were the quieter ones, the beats that only those who listened could hear, the shuffle of servants in back corridors, the murmur of conspirators behind closed doors, the regular crack of wood on wood from the training yard. Bran found himself in that yard as often as duty allowed. It was smaller than Winterfell's, hemmed in by high walls of reddish stone, the sky above a narrower slice. The ground was packed dirt, churned to dust by many boots. Racks of practice swords and shields lined one wall. A few scrubby trees in corners offered pathetic shade that never quite reached the center. Here the white cloaks trained. So did gold cloaks and household knights, and bored young lords who wished to show off their skill. Bran watched them all. On his first afternoon, Ser Rodrik put a wooden sword in his hand and shoved him into the dust. "Feet," the old knight said. "I don't care if the king himself is watching from a balcony. You lose your feet, you lose your head. Now again." Bran scrambled up, cheeks burning. Sweat trickled down his spine despite the mildness of the day. The southern sun felt different, hotter and more insistent, even though autumn had not yet given way. He gripped the practice sword, feeling every splinter in the worn wood. "They do it differently here," he muttered as he took his stance. "They're guards, they're cuts." "They do," Ser Rodrik agreed. His mustaches twitched. "Some better, some worse. You can learn from all of it. But don't forget what you've already learned just because a man in gilt armor says otherwise." As if summoned by the words, Jaime Lannister stepped into the ring opposite Ser Barristan Selmy. The Kingslayer had swapped his golden plate for lighter mail and a surcoat half white, half crimson. His hair shone in the light, his smile easy as he saluted the older knight. Ser Barristan bowed his head in return, his white cloak stirring. He moved with a deliberateness that spoke of old injuries and older experience. They began slowly, touching blades, feeling each other out. Jaime's style was graceful, almost lazy. Small movements, efficient parries, the occasional flamboyant flourish when spectators called encouragement. Ser Barristan was all economy, his sword an extension of his arm, his feet sure. Bran found his eyes pulled toward them, his own practice bout forgotten for a moment. Ser Rodrik swatted him on the shoulder with the flat of his sword. "A knight's first duty is not to gape at pretty swordplay," he said. "Again, eyes on me." Bran flushed. "Yes, sir." They clashed. Ser Rodrik's blows were heavy but honest, his footwork solid. Bran tried to recall every lesson, every admonishment. Watch the shoulder, keep your guard up, don't overreach. The sounds of other fights in the yard, grunts, curses, the clatter of wood, blurred into a steady backdrop. Between passes, when Ser Rodrik circled and gave him a heartbeat to breathe, Bran glanced up. A small crowd had gathered along a gallery that overlooked the yard. Courtiers in bright silk, ladies with veiled hair, a few small folk permitted to watch their betters sweat. Among them, he spotted his sisters. Sansa stood straight and still, eyes fixed on the white cloaks, her face rapt. Arya was half hanging over the rail, her body leaning toward the action as if she might fling herself into it at any moment. Beside them, Peter Baelish, called Littlefinger, lounged with apparent indolence, his thin mustache and pointed beard giving him the look of a fox. He noticed Bran's gaze and lifted a hand in a lazy half-salute, his smile unreadable. "Distracted again," Ser Roderick grunted, bringing his sword down. Bran barely got his own up in time to block. The impact jarred his arms. "Sorry," Bran panted. "Don't be sorry. Be better," Ser Roderick said. "The South is full of men who will smile at you and steal your purse while you blink. Or your life. You want to be a knight here? Then learn to keep your eyes where they matter." Bran swallowed and nodded. He dragged his focus back to the old knight in front of him, to the feel of the ground under his boots, the weight of the sword in his hands. He could watch the white cloaks later. For now, he needed to prove he could stand in dust as well as in dreams. Being his father's squire meant more than training in the yard. It meant running. By day, Bran fetched and carried scrolls from the rookery, messages from the small council chamber, reports from gold-cloak captains, cups of watered wine when the meetings ran long. He learned the Red Keep's warren of corridors and staircases by foot, the quickest routes between tower and hall, the shortcuts that servants used and lords pretended not to know. He learned which doors always stood open, which were kept shut, which ones you never wanted to be caught lingering near. He learned, too, how sound carried in the castle. There were places where a whisper in one room could be heard clearly in the corridor outside, where a conversation on a balcony could drift down into a courtyard like falling leaves. Words were always falling here. Sometimes they landed where they were not meant to. One evening, tray balanced carefully in his hands, Bran made his way from the kitchens toward the hand solar. The smell of stewed onions clung to him. The castle felt different at night. Quieter, but the quiet of a hunting cat rather than a sleeping dog. Torches threw pools of light and shadow along the red stone walls. As he turned a corner, a murmur reached his ears, soft, sibilant like silk gliding over skin. He slowed instinctively, feet landing more lightly. The sound came from a door half ajar halfway down the corridor. A lion's head was carved above the archway, its teeth bared in an eternal snarl. Light spilled from the gap, a narrow strip on the floor. "Too honest for his own good," a man's voice was saying. Smooth, cultured, amused. "Littlefinger. Honesty is a rare coin here." Another voice replied, rich and androgynous, with a faint, unplaceable accent. "Rarer still in men with power. It makes him interesting. Varys, the king's spymaster. The eunuch everyone pretended not to fear." Bran hesitated. The sensible thing would be to walk on, head down, tray steady. He had no business at that door. His father would skin him if he thought Bran was creeping about like a sneak thief, listening to whispers. But something in the way they said him, in the shape of the silence that followed, told Bran they were speaking of Eddard Stark, of his father, and that made it his business whether the South thought so or not. He stopped, heart pounding, and let his footsteps quiet entirely. The tray felt suddenly heavy in his hands. "Interesting men have a way of dying early here," Littlefinger went on lightly. "You and I, dear Varys, we survive by being very uninteresting indeed." Varys chuckled, a low, dry sound. "Oh, I think we are interesting in our own ways," he said. "Only not in the ways that make one a hero in the songs. Lord Stark is still very much a song in his own mind." "He's a Northman," Littlefinger said. "They're born with snow in their heads instead of sense. He'll go blundering about looking for truth until someone takes advantage." "Perhaps," Varys said. "Or perhaps his very bluntness will frighten some from making their boldest moves. A man who stands in the open with a sword can be as much a deterrent as a dagger in the dark." "You always did enjoy your metaphors." Pause. "What of the boy?" Bran's breath hitched. He pressed himself closer to the wall. "What boy?" Varys asked too mildly. "The Stark whelp," Littlefinger said. "The one the Queen's darling tried to bully on the road. The one who might have lost more than a sleeve if that wolf had not intervened. He watches. Children are very good at that, I find, when no one thinks to silence them." There was a soft rustle as of silk shifting. "A wolf among lions," Varys said. "Such creatures rarely fare well in this den." Unless they grow teeth faster than expected, Littlefinger said. I saw him in the yard today. He has some steel in him. Not all snow. Steel rusts, Varys murmured. Snow melts. We shall see what remains when the heat of King's Landing has done its work. Bran had heard enough. More than enough. A chill had settled along his spine despite the warmth of the corridor. He shifted the tray carefully and forced himself to resume walking, making just enough noise that his approach would seem natural if anyone looked out. When he reached the door, he kept his eyes ahead. The sliver of light narrowed as someone within nudged it further closed. Their voices faded to a murmur. At his father's solar, he found Eddard bent over a map. Lines of care etched deeper into his face than they had been at Winterfell. Candles burned low, dripping wax onto silver stands. The city lay in miniature on the parchment. Streets and alleys, gates and walls, the red keep looming over it all. You're late, Eddard said without looking up. Sorry, father, Bran murmured. He set the tray down carefully, the scrolls and wine untouched. His father straightened and finally met his eyes. For a moment, the weight of the day, of wolves and princes and whispering spiders, lifted. Bran saw simply the man who had knelt with him before the heart tree, who had promised to keep him from falling. Long day? Eddard asked. Yes, Bran said. He thought of saying more, of lion-carved doors and words spoken in shadow, of being a wolf among lions. But the warning that had hung in those voices, silvery and sly, held his tongue. He swallowed his fear like a bitter draught and straightened his shoulders. I can carry more, he said instead, if you need. Eddard's mouth twitched in the ghost of a smile. I know you can, he said. Rest tonight. Tomorrow you'll see the small council at work. That will be a lesson enough for one day. Bran nodded. When he left the solar and made his way back through the Red Keep's maze, the torches seemed to burn a little lower, the shadows to gather more thickly. Somewhere above, the wind tugged at banners bearing lions and stags. Somewhere below, in the city's alleys, voices rose and fell, oblivious to the games played over. Their heads. In his narrow bed, Bran lay awake longer than he would admit, staring at the ceiling. He thought of wolves and lions, of honest blades and sly daggers. He thought of the long fall one could take in a place like this, a fall not from a tower but from grace, from safety, from certainty. I won't fall, he whispered into the darkness. His fingers curled in the blanket as if it were stone under his hands. I won't. The Red Keep did not answer. But beyond its walls, beyond the city, somewhere in the wild between rivers and road, a gray wolf lifted her head to the sky and howled.